Hi, my name is Nikki Kloeppel, and welcome to Practical Wisdom Stories. Over the last 15 years as a leadership and speaker coach, I am frequently asked, how do you give a great presentation? That seems to be something that people are always nervous about is, how do we stop worrying about what people think? How do we reduce that performance anxiety and fear that we're going to embarrass ourselves in front of people? And just working with about 10,000 people and hearing people's examples, there are some practical and some wisdom things that I have learned over the years. So first is the practical side that I'll call them the 12 P's. That these are things that we can just think about to help us prepare ahead of time and help us to present very effectively, especially now in a time where work is virtual and, meetings are online. And so we really have to maximize technology and to make the best impression. So a couple of things, these 12 P's to help us. Number one is just get centered first of what's the purpose. The more confident we are that we know why we're presenting, right? Is it a interview that we're trying to get a job and impress somebody? Or is it a morale event that we're trying to inspire people? Is it giving campaign that we're trying to get people to give money? Is it a new employee orientation? So really, first of all, thinking what is the purpose and what is it that we want our audience to get? That helps us feel so grounded, and then we can just lean into that confidence when we present. Then is to just think about some of the process pieces when we are telling a story, beginning with that beginning, middle, and end, and making sure that we have that, oftentimes people say that who, what, where, when, why, how, really having the structure more around beginning with the when and the where when we're telling a story. That hooks our audience right in. Then go through into the who and the character development and really make that rich and descriptive. Then we want to talk about the what. What was the challenge that we had to overcome? Or if we're retelling somebody else's story, what was the circumstance that they had to overcome? And then how? How did they do it? What was the solution that they used? What creative idea did they come up with or did we use to do that? And then also finishing with the why is this important? And making sure that we summarize, pulling it all together and add that insight. So if we have that who, begin with the when and the where, have that who, go through, what happened, how, and then the why of why it's most important. That's going to help us to make sure that we've got the right process of the information that we're trying to get across. Next is just thinking about some of the technical pieces of presenting is our posture. So if, most of the times we're sitting right now in meetings, so just making sure, shoulders are back and straight. It's easy, especially if we're sitting for 8 hours a day. So just being really mindful to, put your shoulders back, sit strong. If you're standing, when we're in person, if you're going to be standing to present to feel more powerful, just feeling really grounded and monitoring our posture, that helps to convey some of the other things of showing that confidence, as well as it is able to help us to project. That's the 4th P, is to project our voice. One thing is I always feel like our calibration is off. And just one example of this is so often when we're presenting, be it in person or virtually, we are thinking about what are people thinking about me, and we're kind of nervous and time slows down. So if we've got a question and answer and we say, hey, who was the first question? We wait and it feels like an eternity, but really it's just a couple seconds to let people think. I remember one time having a client and watching the video, and they kind of just lost their train of thought for a second, and they thought, oh my God, it was terrible. It was in front of a room of people. And when we watched the second timer, it was 3 seconds. That was all that it was. To that person, it felt like 30 seconds, but just 3 seconds. And that is often a good point is the 5th P is if we add a pause. If we add a pause when we're presenting, then if we do lose our train of thought, it looks more natural because we've been adding some pauses as we go along. So that ties to, the pace as well. That we can either do that with pauses Or we can just, slow things down on an important point. Or sometimes we want to be intentional if we're excited and to pick up the pace. And especially if we're retelling a story and something kind of urgent that happened, we want to model the pace of how we're talking with what the content of the story is, so that we can also convey either relaxed, if we're talking about our old dog who's, laying here as my coworker, or if we're, talking about something really exciting and this was about to happen and the customer walked in, or something like that. Another is just having a feeling of power, just realizing as a presenter, especially virtually, we may just have a short time to just use it the most and be able to make it count, have lots of power. We're going to, of course, think ahead of time what we're going to say, but not overthink it, because if we're overanalyzing things, we may not jump in and we're not sure when to be able to interject in that meeting or get our point. Or if it's more of like an assigned time and we have that time, just really being able to maximize that and bring the utmost power to engage. And especially if it is a meeting or a presentation that's going a long time, or there's a panel or a conference, people's attention may wane. So we want to kind of like perk them up when it's our turn and bring that power to our presentation. Another is that we want to have passion. And, sometimes I'm not talking about turning it on or being fake or something like that, where we're like, two different people. But if, first of all, we really care about our content and what it is that we're speaking, just channel into that ahead of time. If you're going to be doing a new employee orientation, bringing in that passion. Why do you love your company? Why are you so excited? Recreate the emotion that you feel so that you can be most authentic, and then you're more confident in being able to express that for other people. Another P is to think about saying people's names. So, for example, my mom is somebody who is really influenced me. So I'll frequently, mention advice that my mom has given me. And what that does is kind of personalize things. You can mention a mentor or an employee or a coworker, especially if the other people present know about it, is instead of just saying someone, saying their name really shows that you've got those personal connections, that you're not just a presenter, but you're really a collaborative teammate. One of the other P's is to involve people in it. So, one is we'll say a person's name when we're telling a story, but also think about people that we can include. So you may be able to ask for volunteers, or say someone who spoke right before you and mention a good point that they have, or ask questions of the audience. If we're facilitating, you may call people out by name, and just say, hey, John, what do you think about that? And that's one way to just keep people engaged and ask advice, and just also make sure that people don't tune out when you're talking. Another thing is using props. I love using props because analogies are a really great way to teach lessons. And so also over virtual, when we're presenting, usually it's just, the laptop or just that little screen. So to just physically pull something up, like if I'm going to talk about energy and I hold up a battery, and say, hey, let's bring that energy. We all know how important that is. It's just a little quick visual that helps people to stay focused. Another is when we use analogies or props, you can ask questions for the audience. So for example, I might say, hey, what's the difference between a thermostat and a thermometer, when it comes to what our attitude is? And then somebody usually from the audience is going to say, hey, a thermostat is something that you're able to control the temperature. A thermometer just reflects it. Great. And then how does that relate to the importance of attitude before we give presentations, et cetera? So that's especially a great way to visually keep people engaged, but also to facilitate doing group dynamics and getting the audience involved as well. And last P is our personality. It's just realizing that the more we are ourselves, the more people trust us and like us, and to not imitate everyone else. If you don't like analogies, please, don't use, props or analogies if that is not how you ever communicate, as a teacher and instructor, I frequently do because it can be something that can be memorable and people connect with. But if that's not your style, don't do that. You know, if you like statistics or you like graphs, great. You know, you can lean in and use facts as a way to add value to convince people. Other ways is using demonstrations. So, you know, it might be if it's technology, doing a live demonstration. You can use numbers, you can use testimonials of other people that have had success with either what you're teaching or a product that you're selling. Being able to show things, you know, that's similar to props, but if you're trying to convince somebody about, you know, let's say, you know, I'm trying to sell the importance of using a microphone, I might hold it up and show it and have that exhibit as a way to do it. So there's a lot of different ways of just kind of thinking of it like a spice of, you know, which one do we want to mix and match to get our point. And as we align to whatever our influence style and our personality is and choose different methods that are most comfortable for us, that personality comes through and the audience trusts us. The other thing is that personality piece is thinking about the personality of the audience or the stakeholder that we're trying to convince. So if we think about them, you know, if there's one person, you know, let's say if it's an interview, if we know already something about their influence style, their personality, then we can kind of tailor ourselves and our style to fit the other person. So if we know that somebody is, you know, one of those connector types and they, you know, you looked them up before an interview, let's say, and they've got a ton of connections on LinkedIn or something, you might start, you know, in a friendly way and talk about either if you have the same alma mater, if you've got some people in common, and because you know that people matter to them, that you could be able to use that. Or if you know that you're making a pitch to or a quarterly business review to your CVP and you know they're a kind of person who's, you know, quick and they just like a bunch of facts and they move quickly, you probably want to avoid making too much small talk because they want to jump right in. So we want to tailor it to their personality. If somebody, you know, let's say kind of has that engineering mindset and they really like data, great. You want to come up with that ahead of time, either in your presentation or the pitch or the interview, and present information with lots of data, show that you've done some research or talk about customer numbers and feedback and use those types of references. And last, if somebody is more that creative personality type, you know, then you might have like an inspirational quote or, you know, using an analogy or something might be effective to tailor towards that personality for them. So those are a couple of the practical P's to help us when we're presenting, especially when we're doing it online. One thing is just remembering the importance of eye contact. And I know a lot of times people have couple different screens, but just look right at the camera so that the person on the other side, no matter where they are, it looks like you're making eye contact with them. And especially now in a time of social distancing and quarantining and, you know, stay-at-home orders in effect, being able to make that eye contact gives us some of that human connection that sometimes we're losing. The other thing is just kind of practically making sure that the light source is coming from the front and having some supplemental lighting. And if you do have a window in the back, you want to dim it out because if there's too much light from behind, it kind of looks like you're in the witness protection program. The other thing is, you know, not being too close and also not being too far away so that you've got, you know, just about the majority of that screen is your face, that they're close enough to see your facial expressions, that they can see, hey, is this good news? We hit our numbers. Or if you're like, this is, you know, we're having a privacy breach, we need to make some kind of changes, they can see that too and are able to, we're more congruent with our message if they're able to see some of those facial expressions as well. The other is that when we're presenting virtually, the gestures are going to be smaller, you know, just right here. So it might be just a few hand gestures if you're counting things out or, you know, if you're going to show a document. And So just being able to have a few, if you just say, hey, numbers are up, or hey, it's been kind of a roller coaster this week, just a few gestures to kind of keep things interesting. And the same with our voice is that modulation that we want to have to keep our audience engaged. So try these 12 P's to be practical in your presentations, that you'll feel more confident.